Delivery Malaysian 370, good morning.
Malaysian 370 standby and Malaysian 6 is cleared to Frankfurt via Agosa Alpha departure for 106.
It was an ordinary air traffic control conversation. The controller talking to this flight doesn't know that he's talking to the most mysterious plane crash that shook aviation history. There was no mayday call, there was no mechanical failure, and this flight just disappeared from radars like it was wiped from the earth itself. The flight had 227 passengers and 12 crew members. The plane was a new 777 model and the pilot was highly experienced. No answers, no traces, and worst of all, no survivors. Investigators didn't know that they were dealing with the most mysterious plane crash in aviation history. The flight number of that plane was MH370. March 8, 2014. Malaysia Airlines now had 777 models in their fleets. It was highly advanced. The autopilot was a technological marvel. Type in a certain waypoint and the plane will fly on itself. There was nothing really failing on it. It was a new model. Aviation experts also say it's almost at the level of the Airbus A330. They take many different countries and locations. This flight was not different. It was a daily commercial flight from Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia, to Beijing, capital of China. I'm sure you know who these two is. This is Zahari Ahmad Shah and this is Farid Abdul Hamid. They were both the pilots of that flight. But for now, I'm just gonna focus on the captain of that flight. You see, he was actually flying since the early days of Malaysia Airlines, since the 90s. He turned into a second officer since 1983. And now he was promoted into captain. He also had a beautiful personal life. He had a wife with 3 kids, and during the Facebook era, he shared some of his adventures online, ranging with holiday trips and using flight simulators on YouTube. This will be focused on later. 40 minutes into midnight, that flight was cleared for departure. Many of the passengers were Chinese going home to their main country. They settled down for the night as it was a 6-hour flight after all. An hour into the flight and the plane was cruising on 35,000 feet. The pilot didn't really have to do much work. They just had to use the highly advanced autopilot systems on board to fly to their next waypoint. As the plane approaches Vietnamese airspace, they were supposed to head into a waypoint named Igari. But just a few miles from the waypoint, the flight simply vanished from Malaysian, Bangkok, and Vietnam radars. It just went missing from radar screens. And like that, the flight has now turned into a ghost, lurking around the air without a trace. 6 hours later in Beijing, Malaysia Airlines had to make that terrible announcement that all 239 people on board the flight was gone. A search party soon began, but the Malaysian government was searching at the area where the flight disappeared from radar. However, military radar tracked its path. It made a sudden bank to the right and then make a dramatic change of flight plan. It went on for 6 hours until it ran out of fuel and the radar signal stopped in the Indian Ocean. After wasting 14 days of searching, they now went to the Indian Ocean to find the crash site, but they were only met with the clear ocean floors and no crash site. Many months and miles of ocean was searched, but they came out with nothing. But this was soon to change. A year after the crash, a group of people were cleaning a small island far from the last radar signal, where they stumbled across a strange metallic item. It was big and covered with barnacles. Investigators later confirmed that it was 100% from Flight 370. The item was a flaperon on the right side of the plane, but this made the investigators scramble even more. How did some debris manage to float to such a far distance from their last recorded signal? Searching for the flight became more serious. They used satellite images, a nuclear submarine, radar tracking, and more. But after 4 years without anything, in 2017, the Malaysian government suspended the search as they had searched almost 12,000 kilometers of ocean and nothing was found. Another company then decided to give hope to all the family members that lost their loved ones. Ocean Infinity decided to resume the search until 2019, where they also came out with nothing. Without answers, without evidence, the family members of the passengers on board that flight were grieving and heartbroken. Why could this have happened? Why is there no answers? Without answers and clues, only theories can kick in. During the night the flight departed, on board there was a load of lithium-ion batteries in the plane's cargo, which led people to think that a fire had happened on board. And that sudden change of flight plan was supposed to be an emergency landing, but nothing was done. Hijacking and terrorism was not really a theory, to be exact, as no passengers on board the flight were connected to any terrorist organizations. Was the crew somehow incapacitated? For a quick recap, in 2005, Helios Airways 522 took off for Athens, but without warning, the crew was unconscious and the only flight attendant tried to save the plane from crashing, however failed. This was because a flight engineer set the pressure of the plane to manual control to do a pressure check, but forgot to turn it back to automatic. Could this have happened to MH370? It is highly unlikely, and investigators don't really think this is a possible answer. But what is more likely is not a hijack, but a murder-suicide by the pilots. Considering it has happened before, like German Wings 9525 and Egypt Air 990 proves this point. Going back to Captain Zahari, he shared videos of him using Microsoft Flight Simulator X. The Royal Malaysian Police has investigated the flight simulator and stumbled across this simulated flight plan. It ended in the Indian Ocean. It raised a lot of suspicion that Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah has crashed the plane deliberately. But still, no one knows if this is the right answer, as family members of the captain said he was a very positive person and his personal life was alright. Same to go with the co-pilot. There was no answers. There was nothing for the family members of the passengers that night. Was it a terrible accident? Was it a murder-suicide? Was it a hijacking? Was it a fire? All these, we may never know. The search for the flight has been suspended, but the NTSB is still investigating the flight and talks are made to resume the search. We just know that for the family members, it's just a horrible nightmare.